For 14 years, he'd been the eyes and ears of severe weather warning in rural Kansas, driving to optimal observation points, documenting storm structure, helping meteorologists understand what was really happening in the atmosphere. Charlie seemed like every other retired volunteer who'd found purpose in community service, until unprecedented weather patterns threatened to create the deadliest tornado event in decades, and everyone discovered that the spotter they relied on had designed the forecasting systems they were using. Charles William Peterson was 76 years old, with white hair that remained unruly despite his attempts to comb it down, and sharp blue eyes that seemed to read atmospheric conditions with the same precision other people used to read books. His weathered hands gripped his truck's steering wheel with the steady confidence of someone who had spent decades positioning himself exactly where dangerous weather could be observed safely, and his voice carried the calm authority that came from understanding atmospheric physics at the most fundamental level. Welcome to the Human Stories. Before we continue this incredible tale of hidden expertise and life-saving prediction, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories about quiet masters deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button. The Storm Spotting Network in south-central Kansas covered over 2,000 square miles of Tornado Alley, where trained volunteers position themselves during severe weather events to provide real-time observations that helped National Weather Service meteorologists issue accurate warnings for communities that could have less than 20 minutes to seek shelter when tornadoes formed. Charlie had volunteered as a storm spotter for 14 years, driving his modified pickup truck to optimal observation points where atmospheric conditions could be documented without endangering himself or interfering with emergency response operations. His reports were legendary among meteorologists for their accuracy and technical detail, providing ground truth that validated radar observations and helped forecasters understand storm behavior that couldn't be detected through remote sensing alone. National Weather Service, this is Storm Spotter 47 at coordinates 37.2431, -98.7034. Observing wall cloud development with rotation visible, estimated wind speeds 60 to 70 miles per hour, quarter-size hail beginning. Storm motion northeast at approximately 25 miles per hour. These precise reports represented more than volunteer weather observation. They were professional-quality atmospheric analysis that bridged the gap between computer modeling and actual storm behavior, providing the critical information that allowed meteorologists to issue tornado warnings with confidence rather than uncertainty. The National Weather Service meteorologists had come to depend on Charlie's observations during the most dangerous weather events. His understanding of storm structure, ability to position himself optimally for observation, and capacity to provide accurate technical descriptions under pressure made him one of their most valuable volunteer resources. What none of them realized was that Dr. Charles William Peterson had spent 37 years developing the atmospheric science that made modern weather forecasting possible. Charlie lived alone in a farmhouse 40 minutes from Wichita, surrounded by the open prairie that provided unobstructed views of atmospheric conditions across dozens of miles. The house was comfortable but unremarkable, furnished with practical pieces that reflected the priorities of someone who valued function over decoration. But the home office revealed scientific capabilities that exceeded storm spotting volunteer requirements. The walls displayed meteorological charts and research documentation spanning nearly 40 years of atmospheric science, severe weather prediction models that had improved tornado warning accuracy, atmospheric physics research that had advanced understanding of storm formation, and forecasting systems that had shaped how the United States approached severe weather prediction. Bookshelves held technical references that most meteorologists would consider advanced material: atmospheric dynamics texts, severe weather analysis manuals, and his own published research papers that had established him as one of the nation's leading experts in tornado prediction and severe weather forecasting. Retirement in 2011 was voluntary rather than mandatory. Charlie had accumulated enough academic tenure to retire with full pension while still young enough to pursue storm observation that didn't involve the pressure of academic research and publication deadlines that had characterized his professional career. The storm spotting volunteer position wasn't about staying busy during retirement. It was about continuing to serve the severe weather warning mission that had defined his life's work, applying observational skills that complemented his scientific training, and using field experience to serve communities rather than academic research institutions. But 37 years of atmospheric science doesn't disappear because someone changes from university research to volunteer storm spotting. And Charlie's trained eye continued monitoring weather patterns that could affect communities where people trusted that appropriate authorities were watching for potential threats. Tuesday, May 15th, started just like every. The atmospheric conditions weren't just favorable for tornado development. They were exhibiting characteristics that Dr. Peterson recognized from research into historic tornado outbreaks that had caused unprecedented destruction and loss of life. Wind shear patterns, temperature gradients, and moisture content were combining in ways that suggested potential for violent tornadoes rated EF4 or EF5 on the enhanced Fujita scale. These were the kinds of atmospheric configurations that occurred perhaps once per decade, creating tornadoes capable of destroying well-built structures and affecting areas measured in miles rather than yards. But current National Weather Service forecasting was treating the day as a typical severe weather event, issuing standard tornado watches and severe thunderstorm warnings that didn't reflect the true magnitude of what was developing in the atmosphere. Dr. Peterson faced a choice that would define his impact on severe weather safety. He could operate as a standard volunteer storm spotter, providing observations according to established protocols while hoping that official meteorologists would recognize the historic significance of developing atmospheric conditions through their own analysis. Or he could use 37 years of expertise in severe weather prediction to alert communities to dangers that exceeded what current forecasting systems were designed to handle. Charlie made his decision in approximately 15 seconds. At 3:45 p.m., he called the National Weather Service office in Wichita through emergency contact procedures that retained his scientific credentials, identified himself by clearances that carried immediate authority among atmospheric research professionals, and provided real-time analysis of conditions that indicated potential for the most significant tornado outbreak in Kansas history. National Weather Service, Wichita. This is Dr. Charles Peterson, Emeritus Professor of Atmospheric Sciences at the National Severe Storms Laboratory. I'm observing atmospheric conditions that indicate potential for historic tornado outbreak with violent tornadoes capable of EF5 intensity. Dr. Peterson, this is lead meteorologist Sarah Chen. We're monitoring the severe weather development, but our current models aren't indicating the kind of extreme conditions you're describing. Can you provide specific observational data? Charlie's voice carried the clinical precision that had characterized thousands of similar consultations during his academic career. Meteorologist Chen, I'm documenting wind shear values, instability parameters, and helicity levels that match atmospheric configurations from the most significant tornado outbreaks on record. Based on my research experience, we have potential for multiple violent tornadoes affecting populated areas within the next 4 hours. Sir, our Doppler radar systems are showing storm development, but the intensity predictions don't support EF5 tornado formation. How are you identifying these extreme conditions? Meteorologist Chen, I'm analyzing atmospheric parameters using field observation techniques developed during my research career. The combination of shear, instability, and storm motion vectors indicates conditions that exceed normal severe weather criteria. Within 2 hours, atmospheric conditions had developed exactly as Dr. Peterson's analysis had predicted. Multiple supercell thunderstorms were producing violent tornadoes that were tracking toward populated areas, with destructive potential that exceeded anything Kansas had experienced in decades. The early warning that Charlie's expertise had provided allowed emergency management agencies to implement evacuation procedures and emergency shelter protocols 4 hours before standard forecasting models would have detected the extreme nature of the developing outbreak. Dr. Peterson, how did you identify the extreme tornado potential so early when our computer models required additional data to reach similar conclusions? Meteorologist Chen asked during the emergency coordination. Charlie looked across the Kansas prairie, where multiple tornado-producing supercells were now visible simultaneously, confirming the historic nature of the outbreak he'd predicted. Meteorologist Chen, I've spent 37 years learning to recognize these atmospheric patterns. Field observation combined with research experience can sometimes detect extreme conditions before they appear in computer modeling systems. The tornado outbreak that followed was indeed historic, producing 7 EF4 and EF5 tornadoes that affected multiple communities across south-central Kansas. However, advance warning had allowed for successful evacuations that resulted in minimal casualties, despite tornado damage that exceeded anything in the region's recorded weather history. The story remained largely within meteorological publications, protecting both operational credibility and Charlie's privacy, while ensuring that severe weather forecasting incorporated lessons learned from field observation techniques that could complement computer modeling. Charlie returned to his volunteer storm spotting duties, providing observations with the same calm precision that had characterized his pre-emergency work. But something had changed in his relationship with the meteorological community and his understanding of how his expertise could continue serving severe weather protection. "Charlie, thank you for the early warning about yesterday's outbreak," said Meteorologist Chan during the post-event analysis. "Your predictions were more accurate than our computer models." Charlie looked across the damage assessment area where cleanup operations were beginning in communities that had been saved by advance warning. "Sarah, I've been studying these atmospheric patterns my entire adult life. Sometimes field experience can see things developing before the instruments detect them." "Were you really a severe weather researcher?" Charlie smiled, adjusting his storm spotter identification that covered credentials he'd hoped never to need again. "I've been working on tornado prediction for most of my career. Now I get to apply that knowledge directly to protecting specific communities rather than just publishing research papers about atmospheric theory." Dr. Peterson continued his volunteer storm spotting until he was 82, when mobility issues finally made severe weather observation impractical. He spent his final years consulting with the National Weather Service while training younger meteorologists in field observation techniques that could complement computer modeling. Because he learned that the most effective severe weather protection often required expertise that exceeded automated forecasting, observation skills that continued regardless of official titles, and atmospheric knowledge that served both individual communities and regional safety with equal dedication to keeping people protected when nature turned violent.